CanMar Morning Talk Show, a fresh take on what's happening in the global cannabis and psychedelic space. Your power shot of cannabis and psychedelics knowledge, featuring the industry's hottest experts, thought leaders, trendsetters, influencers, and celebrities. I'm your host, Melissa. Join me and our esteemed guest as we reflect on the current and future climate of the global cannabis and psychedelics industry. Today's guest is none other than our very own CanMar CEO, May Khatib. May has a wealth of knowledge in the industry and years of experience in regulatory compliance, and she's now bringing her expertise to our CanMar team. Stay tuned to hear more about May's story, what brought her to where she is now as the CEO of CanMar, and learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do as a company, and what we have planned for the future of CanMar. Stick around, it's guaranteed to be a good one. Okay, so May, welcome to the CanMar Morning Talk Show. It's great to have you here. And as you know, May, my first and customary question on the CanMar Morning Talk Show is always around my guest's journey of how they got into the industry. So May, can you please share your story with us of how you got involved in the CHP space and a bit of a backstory of how you got to where you are now as the CEO of CanMar?
Yeah, I would love to share my story, actually. It's a bit of a funny story. I lived in a small town in northern New Brunswick, population 7,000 people, lots of little townships around. It was, a very, very small community knit type area. And as you can understand, in small towns, there's not a lot of opportunities. There's just a few industries that are essentially, supporting the entire community. So I was really involved. I was one of those people because I moved from the big city to a small town, and I was always, I don't know, maybe I have adult ADHD, who knows? But I always had to keep busy. I just had to, be involved in things and help things and work on things. So, I was on parent committees, I was on community projects, I was, working in economic development, I was on the Economic Forum of New Brunswick. I got involved in a lot of leadership initiatives as well in the province. Top 20 under 40 initiatives such, met a lot of politicians. I really got a nice well-rounded education and experience into the maritime provinces, which are the easternmost provinces in Canada. Understanding the economic profile, understanding the social profile of the area. So I was one of these people that, became well connected and was one of the individuals that was known to participate and help with projects when somebody needed help. Anyways, fast forward, economic development, then I got engaged in a community project where I wanted to start youth centers. So I created, a committee, we raised funds, we started a YMCA branch in the community where I was living. And it was specific for youth programs. So I spent about 2 years telling kids to say no to drugs. Alcohol's bad. Cannabis is bad. Marijuana is bad. All that stuff is bad. Anyways, fast forward, I'm just about to transition out of that role and hand it over back to the community. And one of the big warehouses in our area got bought out by a few buyers from Vancouver. And they wanted to start a cannabis manufacturing site, and they needed someone to help them build the business. So my name popped up. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, my goodness, I've spent years telling kids not to. I've never tried cannabis myself. I was a wine mom. I was one of the moms that, you get together and you drink wine. And that's what we did. Wine and chips, actually, wine and ketchup chips to be more specific. That's a very Canadian thing. Anyways, I thought, what am I doing here? Get involved. But this is exciting. This is new. Legalization is hovering over us. We were hearing all kinds of stories. And I'm very happy I made the decision to join the team. I was the 4th employee to join Cannabis at the time and wore many hats, got to learn about the regulations at the time. The regulation was evolving from various renditions to the next to the next. So I was able to see 3 of those just in the first year and a half that I was there. Learned it quite well. Ended up falling into the whole compliance role just because of my background in project development and project management. Compliance is all about, the fine details, making sure, operationally, we're following the law, and we embed the regulations into our processes so that right from the get-go, we're doing it the right way. Protecting the license was very critical, especially for me living in such a small town and understanding some of the economic difficulties that we were facing. I knew that that company in that area would really, really help the economy and do some good. So for me, there was also a personal mission to make it succeed and make it work. And I'm very proud to say that over the course of the following 2 years, I was responsible for licensing an additional 3 licenses across Canada. So we had manufacturing sites in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and British Columbia, with a total square footage of over 3 million square feet of indoor cultivation space and operations. And by the end of the second year, we were just over 1,000 employees. So being primarily responsible for all those manufacturing sites, looking at all the operations, auditing, transitioning from there to doing supplier qualifications. So anytime we did business with any other company, I would have to go and audit them. So I was able to meet and audit so many other cannabis manufacturers and suppliers and processors across the country. And then from there, I started leading our export development program. So anytime we were exporting, we would look at all of the regulations in the other country and figure out what we needed to do to meet their requirements so that we can execute on that export successfully. In all of that, I would say at least hundreds of licenses later, we did start a micro cultivation program, and we were licensing. My team was in charge of licensing for micros. That was when it was initially started, that program back in 2018. So it was very, very exciting. It was interesting. In fact, Chatelaine magazine did an article on me, how I left my job to join a can or a pot plant or something like that. And they talk about me going from a wine mom to exploring cannabis and understanding not just the recreational uses of it, but really the medicinal properties and how it's helping so many people. And later on, I was able to use cannabis in a medicinal way. I had surgery and I used it for pain management, inflammation, and it also helped my immune system. It helped me heal faster, reducing inflammation, taking away pain. My quality of life didn't really have to change much because I had surgery, and that was because of cannabis. And it was a much better alternative to taking opiates, for example, that are synthetic, that are not actually doing anything inside your body. They're just telling your brain that you're not feeling pain, but they're not reducing inflammation. They're not helping boost your immune system in any way. So that was really my story with cannabis, to be honest. And since I've been in Vancouver, I've been involved in the psychedelics industry, working with companies on developing psychedelic assisted therapy programs, learning about the mental health benefits of, using psychedelics in therapy. It's just been an incredible journey.
Amazing, amazing. And I really do love the irony of you telling the kids, don't do drugs, and look at you now.
I know. Actually, a lot of those kids ended up working at our manufacturing site
Amazing.
Years later. Some of them, when I was working with them, would have been 16, 17. So when they turned 19, they were all applying and they were putting my name down as a reference. And I'm like, wait a second, well, you're working here now? Yeah. It was really, really wonderful. It was so nice to see that full circle.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Totally full circle there. That's wonderful. And so obviously, May, you have a really long history in the regulatory compliance space. You were there at the inception. You got to do all of these things. So diving a little bit deeper into this world of regulatory and compliance, first of all, can you give our audience a breakdown of what exactly it is for those who are unfamiliar with this part of the industry? And what are some of the main issues that you have dealt with or helped your clients with over the years?
Yeah, so regulatory compliance. So really, you're looking at an industry that is regulated by government. There's an act and a regulation and interpretive documents to go with it. The problem is, although we have some fantastic growers out there and we have some fantastic processors, they're not necessarily used to the level of regulation and requirement to maintain documents, record everything, quality assurance, because you're manufacturing a product that needs to be, at the end of the day, fit for human consumption. You need to also understand that the manufacturing process that's followed for recreational cannabis and medicinal cannabis is exactly the same. There's no difference. So you really are almost producing almost a pharmaceutical grade product. So it has to go through all types of checks and balances. You have to make sure the water has, certain qualities. You have to make sure you're testing the air. You have to make sure, you have an integrated pest management, policy and processes. You need to have standard operating procedures. You need to make sure you're following the law when it comes to packaging, labeling, even production, cultivation. And all of that, there's record retention, documentation, reports that need to be submitted to the government on a monthly basis. Unfortunately, a lot of people coming into the industry don't realize the magnitude of some of the sort of work that needs to be done alongside. Yes, it's lucrative if you're doing it right, but you need to set your systems up right from the get-go. Otherwise, it's really difficult to backtrack and try to change everything. The licensing piece is a big piece, one of the largest pieces that I deal with. I mean, the licensing process seems easy enough if you look at it, but what they're asking is in fact a lot larger than what the question, tell us about your good production practices. Well, you can't just say, well, I do this, 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 and that. You literally have to reference sections of the regulation, demonstrate how you're following that, show that you've got the processes in place, the forms in place, the right skill sets, the people that you're hiring. You need to have a training plan. There's so many things that come with it that it gets to be overwhelming to someone that's getting into the industry. That's why my team and I at CanMar, we work with clients to help them understand the regulation, set their processes in place, submit their licensing applications, tell them exactly what they need to do for their site, how they need to build their site, what kind of security they need to have at their site. There's all of that is all covered under the regulation, but in a very vague way. And because of our experience, we know exactly what Health Canada and other regulatory bodies are looking for, and we're able to support our clients that way.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really good point, because I think people don't realize how much it actually goes into it. They think, oh, we're going to start a company, all good, but it doesn't really work that way. So
the next step. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So talking a little bit more about regulatory and compliance, you had your own company, Merit Compliance Inc. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that was conceived and maybe some of the projects you've undertaken over the years with Merit?
Yeah, so you can imagine, I mean, I've been in the industry for over 8 years, and I've been in regulatory compliance, operations, processes, etc. You gain a lot of knowledge. You see so many different cultivation practices. You see so many different processing practices. You learn a lot. And then what happens is that people start calling you, like, even though I was working for a company, but a lot of my network of people that I've met throughout the years, they're struggling with this, they have a question with that. They'll call me and, hey, what do we do here? Are we allowed to do this? If we can't do it this way, how else can we do it? And I mean, there was such a demand for it that eventually I started having to charge for it. And then from there, after gaining all the experience, I decided to branch out on my own and start my company, Merit Compliance. I've seen too many companies out there that are offering regulatory compliance services, but they're not. They're giving too much to the client or not giving them enough information, and it's a struggle for them because they truly trust what you are telling them to be the correct information. And unfortunately, a lot of clients aren't getting that. So I really I built a reputation around being straight shooter. I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. You don't need to install all of those things. It's not required. You can if you want to spend the money. And 90% of the time, like, nope, we don't. Do you know what I mean? It's expensive enough as it is to get
Fair
started.
enough.
If I don't need to invest an additional $50,000 because it's not required by law, I'm not doing it, you know? And I said, exactly. So why would you? So that's the approach that I've always followed with my clients. And, and then, I would get them licensed. CanMar at the time was doing recruitment. So, the recruitment piece would come in. I would, speak with KD, who was, the president at the time. Like, hey, KD, this company needs employees. Let's go. I just got them licensed. And so we were building these little micro communities together. And we just decided, hey, we're doing this. We've been working together for so many years. Why don't we join forces? Merit now is part of CanMar. So all of the compliance services are offered through Merit. And it's a subsidiary of CanMar right now. And it's a harmony. We're creating these ecosystems of communities within that, which is why then we decided to get into developing this community hub, expanding it and offering it to the world. We're working with many jurisdictions as it is. So why not offer this and much more under one community hub for the world of cannabis and psychedelics?
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And I think that's really what it should be, a community, because we all need to help each other out. That's something that you've been seeing and doing for many years already. So I think that's a very important thing.
We're such a small industry. We're so young. We need to collaborate. We need to work together. It's not about, buying you out and shutting you down. There's room for everybody, honestly. We just need to know how to access the market, how to move the product. That's the biggest challenge that I see right now.
Absolutely. And you're talking a little bit more about challenges. Of course, things are constantly changing in this space, especially with psychedelics coming into it now as well. So what are some of the main challenges or touch points of compliance across the board at the moment, from a Canadian perspective or on a global scale?
I mean, right now, the regulation is quite stringent. I'm not against regulation. I love regulation because I feel like it creates a minimum standard. But there are some elements within the regulation that have caused some challenges for companies. The excise tax system, the way it's set up. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. I mean, I have some ideas, but and I've already voiced them to Health Canada and the Canada Revenue Agency. The other thing is on advertising and promotion, which I feel very, very strongly about, because you introduce a new product into the economy and you offer little education about it. And then you prevent the corporations from properly advertising and promoting their products to the point where the average consumer associates good quality with high potency, which is not the case. There's so much more to cannabis than just the THC level or the CBD level. There's terpene profiles. There's a number of things. There's multiple cannabinoids within the plant. And the sad thing is that all we can talk about is how potent it is, the strain name. It's very limited. How much is in the package? I mean, and I understand the need to have the factual information, but there's so much research that's happening right now. And I mean, in some cases, you're allowed to reference research, but still under very strict environments. Businesses aren't able to connect with the consumer directly. It's difficult unless it's face-to-face in a very age-gated environment. Digital media does not allow for a lot of promotion and advertising for cannabis, which is why, under our community hub with CanMar, we're going to be offering one of the first, censorship-free platforms for companies to advertise to a target market, because everyone that's going to be in that community is going to be our target market, right? So how best to connect with them than under this umbrella?
100%. And I think you said the right word there, education as well. It's a big part of educating people on what all these different things are, because as you said, it's really under cloak and dagger, we can't say this, we can't say that, which is a huge problem. How are we supposed to educate people if we can't speak about it?
Well, that's one thing. And then if we look at the psychedelics end of things, and this applies to cannabis as well, but mostly psychedelics, we're looking at all of the transforming therapies that are happening across the planet. with the use of psychedelics in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, in the treatment of depression, in the treatment of OCD, and all types of other, mental health ailments. And it just boggles my mind. I understand government making something illegal for use broadly. I understand that. But why stop research? Why stop research? We could have had hundreds of years of research today into cannabis, into MDMA, ketamine, all types, psilocybin, all forms of products that today we're seeing so much medicinal benefits and mental health wellness and benefits from, that we could have already had this information. It's okay, it's fine. I can't buy it off the street, great. But do research, understand it first, and see if there is anything good that comes out of it. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
100%. I totally agree with you, because now we have to kind of start from the beginning and do all this research, which sets things back even further.
As the product is becoming recreational. Right now, it's decriminalized in British Columbia, which I think is a fantastic thing for harm reduction. To possess up to 2 grams, I believe, of MDMA, psilocybin, and cocaine, etc. And I understand the need for that, because there's so much dirty product out there, and people trying to obtain it in very secretive ways. But now that you're allowed to possess it, or you're not criminalized for possessing it, it's going to force the manufacturers to start producing higher grade product, because now the consumer is going to get picky, right?
Absolutely.
So the fear, they've removed the fear element, and there's going to be a lot more questions about, has this been tested? Is this clean, etc. And also, we do have an issue with drug abuse, and this will really significantly help reduce harm to people that are addicted to drugs.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you on that. And sticking on the psychedelics specifically for the moment, of course, we've also just heard the big news in Australia with the legalization of psilocybin and MDMA on the cards. And other parts of the world are getting involved in this conversation as well. So, how do you foresee this moving forward in the future, May? Especially in terms of regulation and compliance. Of course, it's very new right now. So, but what are some of your predictions?
I mean, the psilocybin and MDMA, they're regulated under the Narcotics Control Regulation in Canada. I imagine that in Australia, they will also be creating a regulation around it. The regulation in Canada is following GMP protocols, which is the same manufacturing protocols as you would for manufacturing Tylenol or any type of pharmaceutical drug. So that is something that I foresee happening across the board. The only thing that I do see, and I see that with all live plants, cannabis, psilocybin, anything that's derived from a plant, is extracting that active pharmaceutical ingredient, the actual psilocybin, because it grows within a mushroom. But how do you then separate it, right? So I see a lot of research happening in the growth media of psilocybin, or in the manufacturing. I see a lot of companies that will be synthesizing this product. And now I also see a lot of companies that now we're encapsulating psilocybin, but I've also seen applications where it will be an extract form as well. There's going to be a movement on the lifestyle side of things, where people will be incorporating that into their diets, into their routines, into sports as well. I think it's going to open up a world of curiosity and research, and I really, really hope education. I know on our part, we will be pushing the education and research element on our side in terms of providing information to consumers, but I really hope that in terms of on the level of government, that they will heavily invest in properly educating the consumer and allowing manufacturers to educate their clients as well.
Absolutely, and I think it also works towards kind of destigmatizing or demystifying these things as well, because people don't know much about it, and
no, they don't.
That's why education is so important.
It's key, and especially think of it this way: if you're someone who's suffering and you hear that, hey, they're using psilocybin in treatment of depression, right, and suicidal thoughts, etc., I mean, what stigma is there in using this if it's going to heal me? And I really hope people will start opening their minds more to the opportunity of what these plant medicines have to offer, because it could be life-changing.
For sure, and people are very ready and willing to, jump on the opioid train. But
Of course.
whereas this is plant-based medicine, it's a lot better for you. So I think education will definitely be the biggest thing moving forward.
And the chance of getting addicted to psilocybin, MDMA, or cannabis are almost nil, whereas opiate addiction is very high. I mean, there's definitely a lot of benefits that far outweigh the the stigma or the hush hush culture about not talking about it or not. I think we need to start talking about it. I think we need to open the conversations and start sharing stories. We need to share our stories, because by sharing our stories, we learn. We start thinking differently. We start broadening our mindsets. It's critical to the evolution of us as humans, as people.
And mate, what do you think the kind of timeline is, especially in terms of psychedelics? If you had to guess, how long do you think it would take before this is a widespread kind of acceptance? If you had to guess.
So I'm really excited because there's a lot of work happening right now. I mean, cannabis is happening. That train is moving, and it's moving across the planet. And I anticipate between now and the next 5 years, cannabis is going to be widely known around the globe. There may be some countries, due to some religious restrictions, that may be behind, but once we have enough research to show the medicinal value, I think they will also come on board. When it comes to MDMA and psilocybin, I anticipate in North America, I give it a couple of years still before it's a lot more widely spread and potentially legalized. Around the globe, I give it another 5 to 7 years before other countries start adding that onto their list of legally manufactured and distributed products.
Yeah, I think it's a process, and we've seen
It
that
is.
with cannabis, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future. Really,
Me too. It is. It's an infant industry that's growing, and we're just starting to see it tumble and walk and stand up a little bit. So it's very exciting to be here at the ground roots.
and just going back to the regulatory compliance for a second, what are, let's say, 5 top tips that you would give to businesses who are wanting to get into the space, who are wanting to start out, but they don't know where to start when it comes to regulatory compliance?
Oh my goodness. So I guess the biggest thing is understand your business model. What is it that you're trying to do, right? Number two, I mean, essentially, the licensing process. Really, like, make sure reach out to someone that understands it, that can really explain it to you. Make sure you have someone on quality that understands quality well, that can help you navigate all the different elements of quality. When it comes to pest management, that's something a lot of companies run into. They come in with these great ideas. We want to produce organic, we don't want to use pesticides, etc. Well, to do that, you need to have very strict controls to make sure that your product doesn't get infected, doesn't get, any type of pest or pathogens, that you're not forced to have to treat it with anything. And then, the other thing is that, understand the industry, understand what the market's looking for, and produce accordingly. A lot of companies I'm seeing right now are creating products thinking that they would get listed, but then they run into the issue where the provinces are saturated. There's so many players out there that they're not accepting them. So then how do you move your product? Where do you send it, right? And then, exploring international export opportunities. There are so many countries right now that are accepting imported cannabis, and I think there's so many opportunities that companies aren't aware of, and if they were, they wouldn't even know how to access it, and if they were to make connections, how to execute. So those are some of the things that it's really about understanding that you do have a market. Just how are you going to get to that market is one of the biggest things.
Absolutely great advice, May. Thanks, and hopefully that helps somebody out there who's starting their journey in the CHP space. And then, like, let's go back to CanMar again for a second and talking a little bit more about community. So, of course, this is a very important pillar for us at CanMar. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the importance of community in the CHP space and how this can actually facilitate in driving the industry forward?
Absolutely. The community really essentially was the idea was born from mine and Katie's collective experiences, being in cannabis and psychedelics for so many years, understanding the challenges. I mean, I would go online, I'm looking for something about psychedelics. I'm probably searching for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, trying to understand things, trying to look at research papers, trying to see what educational materials out there, trying to see if anyone's telling their story about it. But then you come into the issue where, is this valid information? Has this been verified? Can I trust it? Is this someone's opinion? There's a lot of things about cooking with cannabis. There's a lot of information out there, but we notice it's scattered. It's fragmented. And then on the advertising and promotion, it's very limited, very restricted. I mean, you really can't see much about. You've never seen like a nice commercial that really hit home with the messaging, right? It's just basically, okay, this is our product, this is the packaging, this is how strong it is, and this is the format. Okay, well, that doesn't tell me anything, right? How do I use it? So we decided to create this community to try to bring all that under one roof. We want to be able to, allow businesses to connect with other businesses to connect with consumers, and consumers to connect with other consumers. How do we accomplish that? So we decided on offering multiple pillars, one of them being the education and research component. One is going to be lifestyle. Because of our background in recruitment, we're going to be offering job listings and, an opportunity for businesses to post positions as well. Another one is events. Events is a really big one. There's so many conferences and there's so many sessions, education sessions and speakers, and, special viewings of films and fairs, et cetera, that are around psychedelics and cannabis, where you can go and meet industry leaders and pioneers and people that are making waves. How do you access that? How do you know what's happening out there? So we do want to have a very comprehensive global directory of events that, when once you join with us, let's just say you're flying to Berlin. When you land, you get a notification. Hey, we see you're in Berlin. Guess what? This is what's happening in Berlin on the cannabis and psychedelics front, right? And then most importantly, allowing companies to advertise and promote their products, allowing them to connect, because everyone that's going to be on our platform is your target market. They are there because they're interested in cannabis or psychedelics for one reason or another, right? So that's how we feel that community will help support the industry and help it grow and help it feed off of each other.
Absolutely, for sure. And as you said, that's where the target market is. These are people who are interested, who want to know more, who want to know what events are happening, who want to know what new products and services are out there. So I think that's very important, as you said. And just to touch on the recruitment side of things, of course, as you mentioned, we started out in recruitment at CanMar. We still continue to recruit across the board, from bud tenders to CEOs. So May, can you speak a little bit more on the recruitment side of CanMar, and how does recruiting in this space differ from, let's say, other industries, for example?
Obviously it's still a business. You're still running a business when you're cultivating or processing or manufacturing, whether it's psilocybin, whether it's MDMA, whether it's 5-MeO, whether it's cannabis, whether it's hemp. On the business front, when you talk about your admin team, your accounting, your your legal, etc., it's all pretty much the same, like on that end of things. But when you get into the operations side of it, cannabis plants, and you'll hear this all the time from all kinds of agriculturalists, it's just a plant. Well, you know what? I would have maybe during the early days would have said, yeah, you're right. It is just well, how different could this be? It's a plant that nobody knows. Not many people know how to grow. It's a plant that from one plant to the next differentiates from itself. It's not like I have a strain of, beef tomato, and every beef tomato plant will behave the same way, right? I mean, you've got a multitude of strains and cross strains, and they each like to be treated a certain way. They each like, this one veges a little bit longer. This one needs to be floured, a little bit longer. This one, there's so many little nuances in the drying process. It's so intricate because, during the drying, there's a like curing process, which means, you have to push out the sugars from the bud. How do you do that? There's so many different methods. How do you dry it to get that consistency and moisture? And then you want the tactile strength. There are so many factors that this plant needs to meet before it becomes fit for sale, is why that becomes different. So establishing these processes, making sure you have a strong training program, documentation, so that if something went wrong, you can easily go back and figure out what happened and where it went wrong and be able to fix it. And yeah, you're getting a specialized skill set of individuals that they either possess it or you have to build that into them. So we're in an industry where we're constantly educating our staff and teaching them how. Most of the people coming into the industry have never worked in a cannabis manufacturer before. I mean, when we started, we had such a hard time finding growers that knew what they were doing. The industry was poaching growers off each other because there was literally a handful of them, and you would pay them whatever they asked at the time because there were so few and far in between. I'm happy to say today, there's a lot more availability in the industry and individuals with these skill sets on the cannabis side. On the psilocybin side, on the manufacturing, there's a lot of work happening on that front. And I see a lot of companies coming up with creative ideas on how to grow psilocybin mushrooms. But on the commerce side, they're very limited as to who they can distribute to. So that's still quite limited. But I see a lot more research happening in that domain.
I think it's very interesting because it's almost like there are two different parts of these kind of companies. The transferable skills, like we could have marketers or lawyers,
Yes,
but then there's
absolutely.
a very niche kind of things like growers. So it's very interesting. Is there any advice? Oh, sorry, continue.
Yeah, sorry. Growers, extractors, formulators. I mean, there's a lot happening in this space. I mean, the qualities and the consistency of the product. I mean, it's not as easy as people think it is, unless you know what you're doing, and then it's pretty easy.
Of course, and to that point, is there any advice that you would share for specifically job seekers who think, oh well, I want to get a job in this industry? What are maybe some things that you would say to them, pieces of advice?
I would say don't be intimidated by this industry. If you have a sound foundation in in either agriculture or etc., every one of these companies has established operating procedures and systems that you will go in and you will learn. You will learn like everyone else. And it doesn't matter whether you're working with this cultivator and you switch to another cultivator, they might have different cultivation practices. You're always going to be learning. So don't go into this thinking that you need to have all of the information before you go in. Go in knowing that I have a good base foundation and I can build on it and I can learn these companies' processes and potentially contribute in the future to improving them.
Absolutely. And you know what, I think as well, people who've never worked in cannabis or psychedelics or this kind of space, they think, oh, I don't know anything about it. But as you said, it's something that you can learn. If you have a skill, you can put it to use.
Absolutely. I mean, we had at one of my companies, we had approximately over 100 cultivation team members. Of those 100, maybe 10 of them were from the industry. The rest we taught, we trained, we built up. And now they've taken on more senior positions and they're overseeing, multiple grow rooms on their own. They're taking care of teams. So it is an industry where you can essentially, learn, grow, and succeed.
Wonderful. I love that. I think that's really amazing. And something I also always like to ask the women that I have on the show, because of course the industry has been a little bit historically male dominated. So I love to ask the women who come on the show, what has your experience been like as a woman in this industry? Have you experienced any challenges? What are your thoughts on being a woman in the industry?
I mean, it is, yes, when I first started, it was predominantly male dominated. So the few women that were out there, we were, the subject of lots of magazine articles and features because we were such a, you know, such a strange thing. It's like, oh my goodness, look at these. Yeah, exactly. But it quickly changed, honestly. I mean, it's all about, knowledge. It's all about how well you contribute. It's all about your ability to be a team member, a leader, and supporter of the industry. So, we started off being a few of us, but slowly we grew to, I wouldn't say half the company. I don't know if there's any company out there, unless it's primarily women led. It's still male dominated, I have to say. And as a woman in general, being in business is still not where we would like to see ourselves, but we're working towards it. And it's just women need to continue supporting each other and, building each other's talent up, and working together and not against each other. And in the cannabis and psychedelics industry, I'm seeing a lot of camaraderie, a lot of collaboration, a lot of unity between women, which I love. I really, really love seeing that. And I hope it continues to grow because I would love to, go to these conferences and just see as many women as I'm seeing men, for example.
I totally agree with you. And I do think, as you said, it is changing. More and more women are getting involved. And there are a lot of women doing really amazing things in the space. So I love to see it. And I hope for the same thing, we go to an event and there are all of these amazing women in the industry. That's really cool. May, just talking a little bit more about the Canadian market specifically, you've obviously seen the evolution of the industry across various provinces since legalization. Do you notice a big disparity between provinces?
I do, and I don't. I mean, it depends. Every province was now responsible for regulating the distribution of cannabis themselves. And it was specific to each province, and each province then released their own regulation on the matter. Some of the disparity that I see is more when it comes to First Nation communities. Although, some provinces have made sort of a comment. I'm so sorry, my have made sort of have inserted a sentence in their regulations saying that we would work with First Nation communities if they were to meet certain requirements, even though First Nation communities have the right to self-govern. That wasn't really addressed well in the regulation when it came out, and I feel like it's left them at a disadvantage. And and in a way. Yeah, that's probably one area where I felt strongly that should be addressed. From a provincial province to province standpoint, some provinces have allowed independent retailers, some have not. And and then some have put limits on how many retail licenses you can have, some did not. So in some provinces, you saw an influx of retailers, so much so that now they're going out of business because they can't they don't have enough business to be able to support their operations. And then other provinces where they don't have enough retailers due to them not allowing, independent or private retail operations. And now they're looking at different models. So I think in general, every province was left to their own, look at your own socioeconomic profile, look at your own economy, look at, your population, look at the demand and try to figure out what's best for you. And it's been trial and error. It's been an evolution, not just for the industry in terms of manufacturing, cultivation, and processing, but also on the distribution front. It's been an evolution. The gray market still thrives. And, the expectation was that government would have more of a forceful hand when it came to that. But again, it takes time, right? So.
But yes, I think that it's very interesting to see that, because in South Africa, we kind of have a unified kind of government in that way. So province to province, it's all kind of the same. So it's always interesting for me to hear, about Canada, the US, even Australia. Things are different in different provinces, states, and so forth. So do you think that there will ever be any kind of synchronicity across the board in the future?
I don't think so. I think the provinces will still maintain some control over how they regulate and and work on the distribution, same as in the US. I mean, state to state, it's different. You can't have interstate transfers or banking system is very difficult. It needs to be federally legal. In Canada, there's actually quite a few lawsuits against some banks for discriminating against individuals in the cannabis industry today, which makes perfect sense. It's a federally legal product. We're not doing anything wrong. Even when I'll tell you the story, when I started Merit, and because I support the cannabis and psychedelics industry, I had to go through so many hoops just to get a bank account. I'm not even touching the product. I'm not growing it. I'm not selling it. In fact, I'm advising companies on how to do it the right way, per the law. and I had to go through. Oh my goodness, it was so difficult. I had to write essays on what I do and how I'm doing it and who I'm supporting and if I'm working with US companies or not. And I decided, full disclosure, I'm just gonna tell them exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing nothing wrong. I cited multiple, sections of the regulation to show that there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. And yeah, it took weeks before they approved my a bank account. That's it. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It's crazy, and I've heard a lot of stories like this. I've read a lot of
Yeah.
stories like this, and it's insane, really. It's crazy, especially when you're not even
insane.
touching the plant, and especially in a regulatory space, you're telling people how to do it the right way. So that's just it makes no sense.
Absolutely.
And of course, Canada has kind of been an innovator in the cannabis space, and now that things are moving forward globally with a lot of countries legalizing, how do you think that Canada can kind of remain this kind of leader in the space? And how will legalization, moving forward in other parts of the world really affect the Canadian market?
Yeah, I really, really think, and I do believe that Canada has developed the gold standard for cannabis manufacturing. And I know that because I've worked with many other countries, companies from other countries, and I've dealt with some regulators from other countries as well. And they've looked to Canada as the standard. We've worked so hard over the past few years, and especially like a lot of companies have enlisted some really fantastic quality people, scientists, etc., in the field that essentially, we're improving on our processes with each audit with Health Canada. We're giving feedback. The government's been very good at engaging the industry as well and getting feedback on a lot of different things. And we're seeing, the outcomes of those in periodic releases from the government on updating to the regulation, updating to definitions, updating to various concepts. And it's been great. It's been thrilling. What I foresee is other countries potentially looking at Canada and establishing a baseline. But what I'm excited to see is what they do with it. And if they can come up with even better ways that then we can start learning from them as well. Right? It's great for us to start this whole thing and be a leader and a pioneer in the industry as a whole, and we will continue to evolve. But I would love to also see us evolve to a place where we start collaborating with other countries and learning from them as well.
I love that, and I think that is a very exciting place to be in. And as we've said, things are constantly evolving and changing, and that's one of the exciting things about being part of this industry.
For sure, it is. It's very thrilling. I'm never bored. That's one thing I've always said. It's been crazy. It's been exciting. It's been a roller coaster at time, but guess what? I've never once been bored.
Is there any specific moment that springs to mind that was maybe something that really surprised you about working in this space to that point?
When we first originally started, surprised me in this space. I mean, I've just seen some of the new products that are coming out there, people really getting creative. What really surprised me is the outburst of various cannabinoids that have started coming through in the last couple of years. When we first started this industry, we didn't know much about anything else except for THC CBD. In fact, when we were extracting, we were only extracting THC and CBD. All the other components, we weren't really looking at them as much and didn't even know how those fit in. Over the past few years, I've started seeing more, that I'm a bit of a nerd. I like to research, I like to read a lot, and seeing all sorts of things about CBN, THCV, etc., and their applications, gut health, weight loss, sleep, etc. And I just thought, wow, like there's so much more to this that our regulation hasn't covered. It talks about THCA and it talks about CBD and CBDA, the acid, but there's no mention of CBN. There's no mention of Delta 8. There's only mention of Delta 9. Does that mean Delta 8 is fully legal? I don't know. So, and that's what we've seen. We've seen a lot of companies, because there's so many limitations on the potency in edibles, and on extracts, it's not so bad. You can have up to 1,000 milligrams in one container, but for edibles, you can't have more than 10 milligrams per package. So if you have 5 edibles, they have to be 2 each. But if you're a medicinal user, you need to purchase, I don't know how many of those packages just to have a dose of what you need, making it difficult. So I've seen companies using Delta 8, for example, which also gives you the same psychoactive benefits as Delta 9 in edibles, and therefore they were able to give higher quantities or higher potencies. That being said, I know that on a federal level, they're looking into it because it has something that they've never accounted for. Yeah. But on a provincial level, there's a couple of provinces that are saying, hold up, we're not selling this. So, I mean, those things are happening, but I find it's exciting. And we just received an update from Health Canada recently on redefining what edibles and extracts are, but they still haven't really brought to light the whole Delta 8 situation. So people are creating lozenges and defining them as extracts. People are creating pre-rolls that are dipped in extract and defining that as extract. So there's a lot of controversy happening right now on these definitions and on these classifications, which I'm surprised that, did government not really know about these things when they designed the regulation? Did they not have a team? Did they not have a team of scientists, dissecting this product before to see what was in it and what? Anyways, so like I said, we're all growing together. We can't expect government to know everything right off the bat. They did the best that they could with the information that they had at the time, and they were on a time crunch to get this out. And we're forever grateful that they did, because now it's opened the doors for us to really bloom and explore and experiment and learn.
Absolutely, and that really speaks to the evolution of things and how things continue to change and evolve. There are always new surprises, right? I think
absolutely.
So that's amazing. So as we start to wrap up here today, May, let's talk a little bit about the future. So first of all, the future for CanMar. What are your hopes for the future for CanMar? What do you see us as a company achieving in the future?
Oh my goodness, I would love to see CanMar become the hub, and I'm calling it the hub because that's what it's going to be, to bring together the entire community of cannabis, hemp, and psychedelic users, manufacturers, ancillary service providers, and by that I mean the bankers and the lawyers, and there's a lot of organizations that are now focusing their expertise in the area, which is exciting, and I'd love to see them all come under one roof. I want to see content developers tell their stories under CanMar. Tell us how psilocybin changed their lives. Tell us how CanMar changed their lives. We're excited to have Jordan Wagman on our team. He's a James Beard nominee and celebrity chef, and he uses cannabis, to help him and improve his life. and his quality of life. He struggled with some skin condition and used cannabis to help him, live a normal life and be happy and, do the things that everybody else is doing. So I would love to see that without fear of shadow banning, without being shut down. These companies are trying to advertise on, social media platforms, and they spend so much money on trying to acquire users, and then they got shut down just because somebody complained about them. No warning, nothing. You spent a year building 50,000 users. Sorry, your account's locked out. You can't get back into it. You have to recreate it and do that all over again. And they're doing this 4, 5, 6 times each year. It's crazy. So I'd love to see CanMar open up the world of cannabis and psychedelics and hemp, its applications, its uses, user stories, create profiles, connect with each other. Businesses can connect with the consumer directly. Consumers can connect to each other. I mean, just opening all that up under one roof, that's where I see CanMar. I see CanMar as being the future of, community engagement on education, events, job listings, lifestyle, those types of things, in one area for the entire planet.
Absolutely, and these are the kind of stories that people want to hear. Even for myself, this is why I love doing the talk show, because I get to speak to people from all over the world. I get to hear their stories, and who wouldn't want to hear these stories? So I think that's where us as CanMar, we can bring all of those stories and all of that information, all of that education into one place, and it's a wonderful thing, and we can all learn from each other.
Yes. It's fantastic. And I love the morning talk show. I love listening to everyone's stories and hearing about their insights and what they're seeing and what they're hearing. It's fantastic. It's all about sharing. CanMar is about sharing. It's about bringing people together. It's about providing, verified, valid information. It's bringing stories to the forefront, and it's allowing us to really support this industry and help it grow.
Absolutely, and everyone has a different story, a different backstory, different history, different experiences, and we can all learn from that. I absolutely love it.
That's amazing.
So May, just a last question before we kind of wrap things up here today, talking again on the future of the CHP kind of industry as a whole. What do you see for the future of the industry? What are some of the hopes, perhaps, that you would like to see change, maybe for the better?
I understand. I think in the early days, cannabis had such a hype, and people thought it was going to explode. They called it the green gold, the green rush. There were so many investments, so much spending, and so many projections for where it was going to go without actually taking it step by step. We went from being born to wanting to fly, and nobody really thought about the process in between. Like, how do we, solidify the industry? How do we, anchor it so that it has a strong foundation, so that it can grow, so it can build? And unfortunately, because of this upward movement, we end up having to retract and stumble a few times. So the cannabis industry has been hit, especially in North America, quite strongly. That being said, though, if you look at the figures and the trajectory of the industry year over year, it's still climbing. It is still growing despite some of the unfortunate events that happened on the stock market with certain companies. Some were regulatory issues, some were more financial, some were, acquisitions that maybe, in hindsight, maybe it should have been done differently. But I do see the industry growing and continuing to grow. I think right now, the whole backing up a little bit, re-examining, the platform, and then moving in a more cautious and slower fashion is probably the more prudent approach at this time. But the industry is growing. It is building. We're seeing that year over year. We're seeing spending growing. We're seeing number of manufacturers going up. We're seeing a lot more micros coming on board, a lot of small scale craft product, which is beautiful, happening as well. And I see legalization happening across the globe. I think that's going to facilitate global commerce as well. It's going to create a global marketplace, which CanMar wants to be a part of as well in the future. But yeah, I do see great things happening in this space. I really do. I'm optimistic.
Me too, and I think it's a really exciting time to be in the space and to see all the things that are happening. the way, you know, I mean, for me, it was a surprise to hear the news about Australia. So let's hope we continue to get those kind of news updates, and in the future see where this industry can go, which I think we can do. I think we can do great things.
Oh, I think so too. I have no doubt. I'm seeing all these new products. I mean, just recently there's a company out of Kelowna that's creating a CBD creamer. And they're saying, you know, if you're elderly and you're taking CBD, you'd want it with your coffee or your tea. I'm like, of course. You know what I mean? It's just fantastic. I just love the creativeness. I love the you know, the innovation that's happening. And I think innovation will drive the industry forward. Absolutely.
And I think that's a very exciting thing, because I mean, nowadays, when do you really get a chance to see this kind of innovation? Almost everything's already been done, but in this industry, sky's the limit.
Brand new. It's still happening. It's crazy. I love it.
So May, any fun
I'm very
thoughts
excited
before we end here today?
No, if you, yeah, absolutely not. I really love what we're doing in this space. I commend all the other organizations out there that are also helping and supporting the industry. And I hope that you think of CanMar when you want to partner up with an entity that's going to help drive your success and be, you know, a partner side by side alongside with you. So that's where I see us moving.
Wonderful. May, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today on the CanMar Morning Talk Show, and can't wait to see what happens next for CanMar as part of the team.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching or listening to the CanMar Morning Talk Show. Join us next time for your weekly dose of cannabis and psychedelics updates from the industry's experts. But wait, before you go, did you know that CanMar is leading global change within the cannabis and psychedelics industry? We are building customizable ecosystems, providing solutions to recruitment, offering regulatory and compliance services, and community hub for the global network. Some might say we are the future. If you haven't already, download the CanMar Hub app or check out our website at canmar.io to see what we're getting up to. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button below to hear more juicy insights from the movers and shakers of the cannabis and psychedelics industry. Until next time, stay dope.